everybody. I know we didn't have a podcast last week due to the fact that there were some internet problems and I didn't stream a lot or at all because of election mania. You think had nothing to do with video games, but mindset. You got to be in the right mindset to play. So, Chapamong and myself are back for more discussions about news and video games. The video games. We're not going to do the Jim Sterling thing. We're going to talk about video games without not being political. Want to watch that video? It's on YouTube today. So, Comrade Sterling striking out again. But we're going to talk about video games. Of course, we're going to talk about all the things, including but not limited to the N7 Mass Effect news and everything else. And in a final bit of irony, we're going to talk about delays in the video game industry. All the games, or many of the games that are being delayed, and how's that going to affect also the delays of the new consoles that are going to come out this Christmas? I mean, we're in November already. We've seen people getting their review copies and whatnot, so they're coming. But with COVID and everything else, I don't expect long lines. Well, it's Black Friday; we never know. At least in the US. So we'll see how that works. So let's start with the news, as we always do, shall we? Let me see, make sure that yeah, we are transmitting, but muted. And let's start with our friends over at Kotaku. Horizon Forbidden West won't be out until second half of 2021. First news of delay, and this is a newer one. This is from Mike Fahey over at Kotaku. Fans of Aloy ventures in Robo Dinosaur Land, hoping we were but a few short months away from Horizon Zero Dawn sequel, have a bit more waiting to do. Today's PlayStation 5, the new Woods to Explore trailer from Sony says Horizon Forbidden West is currently anticipated to release somewhere in the second half of next year. The good news is we narrowed down the next Horizon release date from the vague 2021 to have as vague later half of said years. Fortunately, that's not half of the year we're hoping for. Yeah, okay, so it's getting late. Although I don't think it's completely on COVID, because when they released Horizon Zero Dawn for PC, it had problems. And still has some problems that they have to update it. So I guess Sony doesn't want this game to crap the bed, so to speak. So there's that. So there's more to it than just COVID. But it's a sign of the times, right? We're going to be talking more about that a little later, and that is one of those things. Talk about politics and video games. Ubisoft, and this is from Kotaku again, Ethan Gotch. Ubisoft to remove controversial guests from Watchdog's Legion's podcast. Ubisoft replaced two of Watch Dogs Legion's in-game podcasts in which British journalist Helen Lewis appears after becoming aware, and this is in scare quotes, of offensive remarks she made in the past about gender identity. We are made aware of controversial remarks from a journalist whose voice-over performance appears in two in-game podcasts in Watch Dogs Legion. A spokesperson from Ubisoft told Kotaku in an email, neither Ubisoft nor the game reflect the journalist's viewpoints. This is quoting from Ubisoft. The publisher went on, the development team worked with an external producer to select speaker profile for these podcasts and were not aware of the controversy at the time of booking or recording. While the in-game podcasts are following a pre-approved script that are not speaking in their own name or which their own opinions, we understand that this collaboration itself may be seen as offensive. We deeply regret any hurt this has caused. In response, we will be replacing those podcast episodes with an upcoming update where we enforce our background checks or partners in the future. Talking about who this person is, Lewis is a London-based staff writer for The Atlantic, formerly of the New York Statements, appeared in 2 episodes of Watch of Legion, a book and ear podcast the player can listen to while driving around England capital or via the game's collectibles menu. The character which Lewis voices named simply Helen. Okay. Discusses the creepy threat of fascism in the game world and how it worked in the past as a political ideology. Okay. Game's not being political, but yet, Ubisoft never change. Yeah, while the game podcast release some features, Lewis has been lauded for the writing, including by Kotaku. Lewis' involvement in them have been criticized on Twitter and the gaming forum Reset Era after people began to connect their voice in the game with the journalists behind statements and positions made regard as transphobic. And to quote Lewis in 2018, a man can just say he's turned into a woman, which was critical of new legislation proposed in the UK to make transition easier. What the government proposes is radical rewriting of understanding of identity. Now it's a question of its internal essence, a soul you will. Being a woman and man is not now entirely in your head. Can we say yikes? Alex Trudeau, who passed away this weekend. Can we say yikes for 200 pounds, please? I apologize for the listeners. I know we do have some listeners and viewers who are transgendered. It was a quote. It's not meant to endorse that statement in the least. Sorry, I think I'm not registering your voice. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Cease. Check the stream.
Yeah, now we're doing. Yeah, sorry about that. You go ahead. You were saying.
Okay, so the thing I was saying is like, on the one hand, I think it's a little like odd that you remove like I guess someone who's just done like voice performances for a character that they're not playing themselves, they're not being platformed. Yet like I don't know. I think it's I mean, on the other hand, I see it because she did say some terrible stuff, but like where's sort of the line where we think it's odd that Japan pretty much blacklists people for having drugs, but then someone says something wrong and they get removed from a game in a patch completely because of they said something in their personal lives or in their professional lives, but they're not being themselves in the video game. I think of like the Jontron in Ukulele, where all his lines was just blah 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 blah. That's all he was voicing. I think it's odd. It's odd to put in that much effort to do something like that, which sort of talks. It kind of. I'm sure it'll be something we'll discuss with Konami, but it's sort of reminiscent of that. I mean, on the one hand, I it's something that I'm a bit conflicted on.
Well, I think, to be honest, this is Ubisoft trying to clean up its image, right?
Mhm.
News of this reminds people of, well, Ubisoft. Essentially, it's like, oh, so they created a political, non-political game where people talk about fascism, and the person that they talk about is essentially, and this is the term, turf. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like, you don't. I mean, also remember they also made another game in which, I guess they're now going for, we're going to be political, but we're going to do both sides. So they made another game in which the bad guys were BLM style radicals, right? So if they make one game where they're like, oh yeah, the freedom loving people and the graffiti artists are the heroes, and then they make another one where they're the villains, they can say they're balancing things out, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's more of, we got pillared for this, and we don't want to keep reminding because what's going to happen is people are going to talk about it, right? Regardless of
Hmm.
how distant she is, this individual isn't just doing a job, and the character doesn't say anything in the game that refers her views, etc.
Yeah, and this isn't a voice actor either. This is
Yeah.
just like well, that's sort of like the kind of thing, especially as you brought up, like Ubisoft likes to be not political, but then you pick this specific person to put in your game in a specific role. What are you trying to say with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's another thing. It's like, oh, we have a third audience, third party selected the actors and actresses, which is kind of weird because you want your people in your studio to go like, hey, we want. I mean, original hiring or voice that so do they have voice or whatever, that could be done. But eventually, these people are going to have to come in contact with the studio because they have to record, and they have to do things, and they have to be edited. So the studio is going to get involved, at least the developers on the developer side, right? Um, and seems to be like a selling point of the game as well, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, on one hand, you have the old, views expressed in this program are not necessarily the views of the people that the station or the studio or the developers, etc. But on the other hand, it's like,
You are presenting them.
yeah, you're
It's
presenting
sort of
them.
like I always say I hate those stupid disclaimers, especially when they're like, "This is a paid advertisement. Does not necessarily reflect anything, with the studio and stuff." Even though we gladly took their money and are giving them a platform to sell like their woo head-on medication or something.
I mean, another thing is that she's talking about fascism, and particularly in World War II, before and during World War II, the National Socialist, that is German Fascist Party, particularly targeted members of the LGBT community, and they destroyed years of research on
Yeah,
trans people. Like, Germany was the leading light on research and gender reaffirming. I was going to use another term, but it's an outdated term. Reaffirming
treatments.
treatment, etc. And the Nazi Party, the National Socialists, destroyed it because it was thought as an aberration. To now have somebody who clearly feels by their statements that it is to be trans is to be an aberration, right? Doesn't fit the whatever mold they're talking about fascism. It's like, that seems like a blind spot there, right? And we're not. There's a difference between, I'm talking about people. I would suggest a channel here, Jesse Gender, for people who like Star Trek. She's talking about Discovery and a new character that is non-binary and or trans, and she has some criticism about it, right? And making a misstep, like, we tried but we screwed up, versus we just went along with it and got caught, and it's like now we're backpedaling, right? Yeah, that seems to be the situation here, basically. Like, they didn't
Yeah.
they didn't I mean, and the thing is about Ubisoft, especially when most of its recent games, they just use political items just to gin up the sales. Like, oh, it's current events, and it's like that, right? It's the I guess the Law and Order style of game of pushing their games. Right? It's based on current events, but not doesn't match any specific event. Right? This case is about police brutality because there's talk about police brutality. So let's let's make a show out of it because people are gonna watch, right? And it's gonna be controversial and stuff like that, rather than making it because that's what they want to do, and they want to confront this issue or issues, have an opinion whether people agree with it or not. Because, if, for example, I mean, it's also about courage as well. If you're gonna say fascism is bad, right, that's gonna
Hmm.
be the message in this particular game. Just say it. If you're gonna say fascism is good, which I don't agree with, and you're gonna get pillared for it, fine, but you just say it and take your lumps, right?
Yep.
So this is like, oh, we're gonna talk about fascism being bad, but we were not really careful about who actually were getting engaged into talking about this. So it's a screw up. And when it comes to Ubisoft, it doesn't come from. I don't think it comes from a point of view of we were trying to do good and screwed up. It's like, we don't care, got caught, and now we're backpedaling.
Yeah. So I sort of think the takeaway is maybe don't go after like people who are just I guess aren't professional actors or don't do because I'm assuming that this person isn't like a voice actor or isn't
No.
trying to break into voice acting. See, that's where I sort of had the problem with that. It's like, maybe let's just not. Like John Tron wasn't the voice actor, and that's where I can sort of see the thing. It's like, so you specifically wanted to put him in for a reason because like,
Mm-hmm.
he was a Banjo Kazooie fan
Mm-hmm.
and showed a lot of support for the ukulele project. So yeah, sure, we'll put him in. It'll be a cute little reference for fans. But then, oh no, the tide changed.
Yeah. So, moving on to other news. And this is again kind of delays and new generation stuff. PT doesn't work on PS5, though at one point it apparently did, but I think that's over Kotaku.
Mm-hmm.
Playable horror teaser PT isn't backwards compatible on the PS5, even if you try to transfer it directly from existing PS4. It's not clear why. I think we know why. A lot of the library of games associated with your PlayStation Network account on the next gen console, as Kotaku editor in chief Stephen, it could be Stephen, but let's go with Stephen Totilo did. And PT will have an icon with a slash through it saying it's not available to download, and message saying playable on PS4 will instead direct you to back to playing in the old hardware. And Polygon Michael McWhorter, McWhorter, I apologize to Michael for messing the last name. And that was possible to play PT on PS5 on one point by transferring it over directly from PS4. It was stored on. So you had to make a direct link, I guess. Even trying again this week, McWhorter wrote that it was no longer possible to transfer PT to PS5. The proof of concept demo for Kojima Productions' canceled Silent Hill project was pulled from PSN back in 2015. Even people who had already installed it once before were able to reload it. This was back during Kojima's protracted separation from veteran Metal Gear developer Hideo Kojima. And whatever reasons, the act of scrubbing PT from PSN seemed to have made it clear the publisher didn't want any more people play the demo. So I guess we kind of know why it's not available for PS5.
Yeah. So I find it interesting though. So I don't think the article covered it, but did something change? Was there like a firmware update? I don't know if they've removed something from the PlayStation Store for the PlayStation 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if you can push like updates on software that's sitting on a console if it's not on the store and if they're not actively downloading it or something. So I'm not sure what exactly happened there. If it was at some point they were able to transfer it and play it just fine.
Yeah, reading more. Back in October, Konami confirmed the game beta that PT would not be downloadable for PlayStation Store and PS5, but left open the possibility that players who already had it installed on PS4 might be able to transfer it over themselves. This is ultimately Konami decided against following even that. Sony told Polygon that no longer making PT backwards compatible on PS5 was a publisher decision.
Yeah, so I guess that they're really that vindictive because the way I see it, it's like really like, okay, Konami, you know what? Get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, at this point, I would also tell people, you guys get over it as well, because as someone who's never played it, maybe this is like the best video game ever made, even though it's just a demo. But like, is it really all this worth like complaining about at this point? Because now it's sort of like the conversation is just like, okay, guys, you've been beating this dead horse to death. Is this what I sound like when we talk about Mass Effect? But like the I was like, okay, Konami, you know what? Put it back up and sell it for $100. You'll get people that complain, but I'm sure you'll get plenty of people to buy it to make it worth your the effort to just put it back up there and sell it for $100. It's like, okay, you guys want it? Sure. Well, it's our thing. $100 pay up.
Yeah, someone will pay $100. Just
People will pay for it.
yeah,
Apparently, if it's that really that good, people will pay for it.
yeah.
I mean, I'm giving greedy gaming companies, ideas and stuff, but give the people what they want at a price, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I don't understand. But I guess maybe Japanese people are very vindictive. Maybe it's a cultural thing that we don't understand.
I think it's more loyalty to the company thing that Kojima seeing has been
Dead,
disloyal.
dead completely,
Yeah,
dead to us
disloyal. Yeah,
completely.
yeah,
Like never existed.
yeah. You're supposed to be loyal to the company first and foremost, regardless of how they treat you. At least that's how Konami seems to be operating. I'm not sure that everybody does that. Nintendo doesn't seem to operate exactly like that, but then Nintendo does other things. You go like, oh, Nintendo. Talk about other Japanese companies, and this one is Capcom. And they seem to be in the receiving end of something very bad. Capcom hit by a cyber attack. Group claims to have stolen 1 terabyte of employee and customer data by Luke Plunkett. On November 2nd, Capcom servers were brought down by unauthorized access carried out by a third party, as Bleepy Computer report. The group claiming responsibility for the attack say they downloaded around 1 terabyte of data containing everything from employees' visa records to customers' bank details to proprietary business information. Capcom, in their own saying, say at present there is no indication any customer information was breached, while adding they're consulting with the police as well as related authorities on both the breach and the attempts to restore their servers. I mean, change your passwords, I guess, if you have a Capcom account, because you never
I don't.
know. You never
You
know.
a
Yeah.
Capcom account? What? Well, I'm not that particularly big on Capcom products for one reason or another, but I don't think I have like a Capcom account or even knew a Capcom account was a thing.
I'm probably through. Well, I do. I bought Capcom products through Steam. Steam hasn't reported anything, so
Yeah, but you're buying their product through like a third party
yeah,
person.
they don't.
I'm looking at
They
like
share the
their
money. They don't share the. They shouldn't be sharing the data.
yeah, I'm seeing like a Capcom account for like their forums.
Yeah, that might be it.
Capcom.com. I mean, unless they have a store. Oh, so maybe this is why. Here we go. A store.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can buy their games directly
There you go.
from them. So that's what I'm assuming. And merchandise. Ooh, those are cute plushies.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I assume it's the Capcom store then.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to Xbox, the Xbox Series, whatever, backwards, and you're gonna be hearing me saying the Xbox Series, whatever, from now to 5 years from now, because I'm not gonna bother remember whether it's X or S or Sierra or the X-Ray or whatever. I don't care. I'm just gonna call it that because it's just dummy. It's just dumb the way they name things. In Capcom, no Capcom, Microsoft
The
names
Xbox,
things.
whatever.
Yeah, Xbox whatever. Backwards compatibility effort is pretty interesting, according to the Plunkett over at Kotaku. Here's something I like very much: interviews with console executives about coming next gen machines that got very into hard numbers, internal procedures, explanations of how much work went into making sure the Xbox Series whatever's backward compatibility was up to scratch. Like this one that Inverse did with Xbox Director of Program Management Jason Ronald, where he says like things like, "We've been working on the Xbox Series whatever and Series whatever else since 2016. Before we had Silicon, we had taken performance captures of existing games and run them on simulator on the next generation chip. What allowed us to identify potential issues in Silicon before it's even produced." Oh, okay, there were. It's true, because of course this could be just chest pounding. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm saying that they're not telling the truth either. I just don't know. See, I don't care what executive operations and console even talk about the specs, but behind the scenes, we'll chat about a feature like this with real numbers, seriously, that's some good shit. Okay, fine. That's interesting. Yeah, basically, this article is all about how they were very keen of testing all the features, including but not limited to backwards compatibility. So if you really want that Xbox library, there you go. Apparently, they're going to have full support, or as much as possible. Also from Otaku, Ethan Gatch, Among Us will soon let you report people for being assholes. Which, in a game where it's basically a traitor game, right? Traitor game, where people betray each other, isn't being an asshole the whole base? I guess this is people just, on chat or something. People being toxic, reducing hacks. Among Us developers Inner Sloth says players will have new tools for punishing those pure souls come December when the game gets a new account system. Okay. To quote from the developers, accounts will allow players to report accounts that are the first account is in brackets, so to know what you're referring to. They're toxic and or hacking. Developers wrote in the last unofficial roadmap on Monday. I hate the term roadmap. I hate it. It's one of those terms that is like, Oh, everybody's using it. Now we're gonna use it because of course we are.
Microtransactions.
Yeah. They may be bit bare bones at first, but things like friendless will also come as later date after launch. I mean, friendless makes more sense, right? So if you have a friends, people you trust, then you play with them. So good for them. They're putting in some controls. Nice. That means that Alexandro Ocasio Cortez can play safely without being harassed by, I guess,
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell. The turtle has entered the game. Like, oh no. A little bit of.
Mike Pence, Mitch McConnell. I don't know. One of them, I'm sure.
They're all sus, so yeah. Or is it sus? It's sus for
Sus.
suspect, yeah.
Uh,
The new Gorilla's music video takes place inside Grand Theft Auto 5. This is over PC Gamer by Jonathan Bolden, but if you press the link they give you, it doesn't work. It goes to private. So we're going to take their word for it. The latest track and music video from Gorilla's Song Machine project is called The Valley of the Pagans and is shot within Grand Theft Auto 5. This video transports a cartoon song into a chill cruise around the city of Los Santos. It's a journey of mellow beats featuring lo-fi Prince Beck's voice on a video call via GTA staple iFruit phone in the corner. Well, that's pretty interesting. I guess they have permission to do it from Take Two Interactive, because otherwise, it's like, oh no, we're shutting this down. Although permission is like, sure, do it, whatever. We'll get, we sold millions upon millions, trillions, billions of dollars in microtransactions. One more video, it's okay. It's a fine. It's okay. On the heels on real life news that a was possible coronavirus, what's it call it? I'm blanking on the thing with the coronavirus and the not getting sick and
wave?
Huh?
A wave?
No, not that. Oh god damn it! I hate when this happens. My brain is melted.
Quarantine?
No, it's not a virus because it is a virus. Antibody virus. My brain is looking for
Vaccine?
vaccine. That's the word. Yeah, finally. It's on the wake of a BBC News reported this morning, at least I saw it on Twitter, that a 90% effective vaccine has been tested by Pfizer.
Ooh.
And promises, at least by the president-elect, Joe Biden, not John, Joe, that the vaccine will be distributed for free, right? We have this information from the video game side of things. EVE Online players have completed 47 million tasks to help researchers gather coronavirus data. By Melinda Hetfield. We talked about this before, using EVE and other resources like this for research, giving immunity to helping out the fleet. Back in June, scientists at McGill University School of Computer Science announced a return of Project Discovery, a mini game that helps them with data gathering. This is period around Project Search shed some light on data about the coronavirus simply by mapping groups of cell populations in game. EVE Online players have seen really stepped up to help, with more than 171,000 gamers completing a staggering 47 million tasks, according to BBC News. This number reveals the strength of citizen science, the number of mini games completed amongst to 36 years of categorizing cells, something that would have been simply impossible for the team at McGill to do on their own. All EVE Online players need to do, on the other hand, is draw polygons around cell clusters. EVE Online's lead producer, David Ecker, says it took little to get people interested in the minigame. We gamified this quite a bit. There's incentives for people to do it, but also just the heart of the soul of our community as well. These are things our people really enjoy, and this reality is for the greater good. I mean, on one hand, one big giant loaded hand, because hundreds of thousands of people are dying infected, and over 1 million people have died worldwide and counting. This is a good thing. On a much smaller, tiny current president of the United States hand, topical humor, gamifying stuff like this, like work you should be paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can see this being abused. Like,
So
say,
no one
having GameSpot, have their employees dance so they can get the privilege of working extra hours for GameSpot.
Yeah. But, I mean, no one's making them in terms of and they're not really being incentivized other than it's just like a gameplay loop.
Well,
I
that's the
think no
thing. It's
different.
like, yeah, that's the thing. And you're working, and I mean, you're volunteering your time.
Yeah.
They did that, but this is so easily people can just sort of, because we're talking about video game industry here. They can so easily
Yeah.
sort of. I mean, we already have paid
Oh, yeah.
mods and other tricks. So it's like, oh yeah, you do all the work.
And of course then you the place where it'd be right for exploitation would be hanging it over people's head. Well, if you guys don't play, then the coronavirus will might get out of control and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people might die if you
Yeah.
don't do this. I mean, it sort of reminds me of like the PlayStation had this for it wasn't a game, it was like it was some sort of program that you would run when you weren't using it, and
Hmm.
it would like calculate, I think like protein molecules or something or like structures, and it was helping some sort of research group and
I mean, that has been around for a while, at least in the early 2000s when the internet really sped up. You could donate, and you still can do it, donate a percentage of your computing processing power. You get an app, you install it in your computer, and it runs in the background. And the idea is that, hundreds, thousands, millions of PCs, or in this case, consoles, especially current generation, next generation consoles, which are very powerful, are just running the numbers, right? Which is it's much far by better than, say, having a supercomputer do it, because for all the obvious reasons. I don't have a problem with that so much, as long as it's not an invasive app that can ruin your computer, whatever, right? If it runs out of control, so, a would-be virus or something like that. But this is people doing stuff.
Mhm.
Yes, they're volunteering. I admit it. Like I said, giant hand, tiny hand. Right on one hand, we need this kind of stuff right now. On the other, right, there's that possibility, expectation we should not dismiss.
It's or like I'm just thinking too, it's like a mall survey. It's like, "Hey, play this mini game a couple times and we'll give you this in-game, I don't know, sword or something or whatever Eve Online, like spaceship,
Mhm.
phaser, laser, I don't know. I
I
don't know
mean,
anything about Eve Online."
it was even in Yakuza. Remember, I think it was Yakuza 2 that had you could go to the bathroom, and in order to encourage people to
Oh yeah,
literally
the
piss
peeing
accurately,
game.
they had a peeing game, which
I
I
can see yeah.
I don't know. I don't. There's some
I
things I
couldn't
don't want to
quite.
get. I don't want to gamify my pee. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean,
I
it's a game
mean,
joke,
and
but
did you ever like I've seen like little sticker Amy things that you stick it on the toilet for to help young boys aim. I would always kind of like do that myself. Like, I'm gonna pee accurately in the toilet.
I
Like
guess so.
kind of gamify it myself, but I guess it is weird if someone else is like making gamify.
You're
I'm just
pissed.
thinking, I'm just imagining like a carnival like person with the hat and the canes, like, straight up, pee accurately. Come on, kids, let's pee
Uh,
accurately.
mm,
I honestly though, like in the I couldn't, I didn't quite understand the mechanic. Like, what am
yeah, I
I
know.
doing correct? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
And I'd always fail that peeing mini game, but
he was there.
it was there,
Yeah, he was
and
there.
honestly, it's like I can see that being a thing in Japan.
Mhm. Uh, well, well, this is an alleged, still developing story. An MSI factory in China seems to have caught on fire by Jody McGregor 14 hours ago. A short video posted online shows smoke billowing out of it. A video recently posted in Reddit with the caption MSI headquarters in China apparently just went up in flames. There goes my 3080. Wow. People might be dying, but I didn't get my 3080. Reddit,
Hmm.
why don't you change? Shows a fire in the MSI plant in Kunshan. While not actively MSI well, not actually MSI headquarters. That would be in Taiwan, there where the hardware manufacturer is based. The planned significant site housing 2 factories and an R&D center with when it was inaugurated in 2003. And yet we don't know anymore anyone was hurt in the fire. I hope nobody was. And what the effect it would have on production. So although there's no knowing if your GeForce RTX 3080 just went up in smoke. However, and this is, I mean, this is I guess, a newsworthy note, but it's like coming out of nowhere. MSI CEO Charles Chang died just 4 months ago after falling from the 7th floor of a building in Taiwan capital Taipei.
Falling or jumping?
It says
That
falling.
there's a difference. Okay.
Well, I mean, it is, one is an accident, the other one is, murder. But it's like, Mr. McGregor, what do you, I mean, it's a very short article, but it's like, I guess, I mean, that's something we should know. I'm confused. It's like, yeah. More on PC Gamer. Never change. Again by Jody McGregor, and it's a person. I think identifies as, yeah. He's that a guy who, yeah, he's identifies as a male. But, then I guess Jody is a male name if you're male. As simple as that. Um, uh, you know, Microsoft is looking to buy Japanese studios, according to the report. More studios to be bought by Microsoft under the Xbox Game Studios banner. Fresh from acquiring Bethesda, Microsoft apparently in talk to buy some studios in Japan. Bloomberg has reported several Japan-based game developers, from small to big, said Microsoft has approached them about buying their business. These developers requested which remain anonymous, of course, because they don't want to derail the negotiations. But this gels the statement Xbox head Phil Spencer made last year that it would be nice if we found an Asian studio, in particular a Japanese studio. In position in Japan, according to Famitsu, only 0.1% of this year's console sales in Japan have been on Xbox One, but both the Xbox Series whatever small and the Xbox Game Pass could help them improve their position in the world's third largest video game market. If they were to outright buy, say, Platinum Games, that wouldn't hurt either. Or Konami. Just saying, it's a Japanese studio, man. So
well,
those, yeah.
Are they more than a Japanese studio though? I mean,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they also have. I mean,
I guess they could buy the video game
division, which is tiny nowadays because most of the stuff they're doing is pachinko anyway.
Oh god, and it's like, hey, we got PT back. So hey, about that $100 for the demo idea.
Yeah. I made a video on Saturday. I streamed and made a video posted on Sunday twice because I'm a moron. About Mass Effect Trilogy, about the news on the 7th of November of 2020 that we are getting a Mass Effect remastered edition. However, there's some other news to go with that. One of them, by Rock Paper Shotgun, is that the Mass Effect modders have been unofficially remastering the trilogy for years, and they made a video about it. And essentially, this is very much makes all the it recreates all the cutscenes at 4K 60 FPS, and there's improving in other areas, so that Second with the Fem theme, Miranda and Jack romance mods are up next. They allow Shepard to go through the characters' entire romances, since the vanilla game locks them to Guy Shep, which have never made any sense because Jack talks about being with women. Okay, let's not discuss. I don't want to. It actually does make a lot of sense, but I mean, yeah, whatever. And in my personal, in other words, this is a video, and you, I know you played it with these mods. I never tried these particular mods, but you played it with enhancing mods, which is kind of like the same thing that the remaster probably is doing, right?
So this is the thing with I have with the remasters. Like, I'm wondering what it is that they're doing a lot of different shaders and stuff, which I'm really curious to see if these are going to be just as good or superior as anything that the fans have made, or are they going to be inferior, or just like, oh, why did you bother?
Well, I think what's going to happen, it's going to be more native to the new consoles, PlayStation
Yeah.
5 and Xbox Series, whatever. Uh, and these mods are basically only almost always exclusive for PC for whatever
Yeah.
hardware that you have, right?
And I guess I can see it. See, you're essentially bringing a copy of the Mass Effect trilogy with these mods already installed in it for general consumption, because not everyone is savvy enough or just have that accessibility to be able to do that, especially if they don't have a PC.
Yeah.
That's something that I always try to kind of move away, is the assumption that, oh, everyone nowadays should have a computer or something, or, hey, Blizzard, a phone. Everyone has a phone, right? Huh? Yes, because everyone could definitely afford a smartphone.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and also I think it's even if you have a PC working with mods, it's can be complicated. I mean, one of the things
Yeah,
I did with the original game, I wanted to use a controller, so getting that mod in because the version of the original Mass Effect that got ported over to PC wasn't done by the original company, because
no,
the game was exclusive to Xbox 360. So it plays with keyboard and mouse plays a bit janky. But the PC version, they changed the some of the mini games, which
yeah,
using a controller don't work very well. And all the reason why I also use a controller is because of the Mako. Right, it's much easier to me control the Mako as a vehicle and something that has like sticks and you can maneuver on the fly, rather than a
yeah.
mouse that
Then
is never really driving with a mouse. I never been able to do it. Some people are like, I don't have a problem with that. Well, that's you. That's not me. And it's my game, and I'm modding it that way. But getting it to work, it can be complicated. You have conflicts of mods, and then you have DLC, or did you buy this DLC but didn't get this other one where you need to get this. Most of the time, as a game is out there longer, it has more expansions and stuff like that. Modders will mod so that includes all the DLC. That happens a lot with Skyrim, for example,
yeah,
and other games. And so it's like, oh, you don't have the DLC, well, then this mod's not gonna work. But I want this feature. It's not gonna work. So you got it, download it, try it. Crashes the game. You might lose saves, etc. It's like, it can. I've known I spent entire afternoons and evenings just modding one game, just getting the mod list right, and making sure that nothing is corrupted and it works. And it's like, oh, you're playing the game, and then 20 hours later something happens and it crashes. So modding is great, but it's not for everybody, even for PC users. So and I would not you know counsel everybody to use it on every game. And this game also, they might be using a new engine, hopefully
I
Unreal and not
I doubt it.
Frostbite. I think also what they wanted to do was harmonize the gameplay. I get the feeling that they wanted,
I
if they do this well, they're gonna take the Mass Effect 3 gameplay and make it universal throughout the three games.
I wouldn't hold my breath. I think that's way more giving them more credit than what they probably have done,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that would be nice. And I can see it's gonna definitely streamline the save transfer.
as
Like
well. Yeah,
definitely.
that's another thing. People, especially people in consoles, do not have access to the original games, and or may have just one game or two, and then to transfer the files. I guess they'll probably also do a website like it did for Dragon Age, where you like, oh, we'll choose general decisions and all that. Although I hope it's as good
That
as or better than Dragon Age, because Mass Effect has a
I
ton of little decisions
yeah.
that don't carry over unless you really play them. You know.
Yeah, and they did sort of try that with the comic book DLC, which again, it's also missing those finer details, because most of the time it's going to assume that you didn't do it.
Yeah, and yeah, it has a lot of. I one time it's like, oh, I'm gonna try with the comic book, and there were a bunch of people who just didn't appear. Right, of course, if
Yeah.
you only played Mass Effect 2, it's like, well, I don't know any of these people, but if you played the original Mass Effect, it's like you expecting the Mass Effect 2. That happened when I went back to do it on PC for streaming. It's like, this person's not here, that person's not there. So I went back, played Mass Effect, made sure I made all the little decisions so they would carry over. Also, there's problems with there was a bug that then they had to fix by having Shepard answer some questions in the second
Yeah,
game.
it's the
Yeah,
I wonder if they fix that, like, but I doubt it too, because they already made the second game with that bug in um in mind. There's two like safe bugs. One of them isn't as important. It's the the Comrade Werner bug in the first game, no matter what you choose, the flagging, the way it flags your decision, it always flags that you shot him.
Mm-hmm.
So then in the second game, he's always going to accuse Shepard of shooting him, even though I think it is scripted in there that you did like your other choices too.
Mm-hmm.
So then like that's why in Mass Effect 3, he'll have that line, "Oh yeah, if I ever accused you of you shooting me when I didn't, I'm sorry, I was confused." That's why they throw that in there, because
Yeah.
he's like a fourth wall breaking character. And then the major one is your choice at the end of Mass Effect 3 when you choose your counselor, because once you defeat Sovereign Saren hybrid thing, the game saves, and then you choose your counselor, and it doesn't save after that. There's no
Yeah.
auto save after that decision, so that decision will always go unchecked marked, and that's why that questionnaire is in there.
Mm-hmm. Which is ironic because if you haven't played that game,
Yeah, it's
then
like
you don't have no
who the hell are
context.
these people?
Yeah, you have no context for it and whatever. Also, I think they should fix the thing where by having the website, they could fix the thing where if, for example, you're playing Paragon, which I almost always played because I always play Goody Two Shoes, and Paragon, it's pretty much a good guy. It's a more diplomatic, more patient. I only shoot you if I have to in the face, but I will do so because it's a game. And I'm a Space Marine. Sorry for the bow and the dogs in the background if you could hear it. Um, the thing is, every other game assumes that if you haven't played the original, all the decisions you made were Renegade. Almost like a
Yep.
punishment, like you're a renegade, and it's the worst possible
Or
outcomes.
that you didn't even bother doing like the side quests or
Yeah,
anything.
exactly.
It's because I see that like the renegade tends to lead to more people dying, and it's easier to just like, oh, let's just not bother trying to reintroduce this character. So we'll assume that they choose the one that leads to that person being dead and no longer existing.
Yeah. Two pieces of news, and I'm going to read them back to back because this goes into what we're going to be talking the bottom of the hour. Controls messy next gen upgrade delayed to next year, and a year later, Google Stadia is finally getting family sharing. Essentially, and this is something that is happening more and more, but particularly for COVID, the impact that we talked about throughout the year, what was going to be the impact of COVID-19, and one of the things we predicted was going to be delays, especially around the release of the consoles, which are to be released officially at the end of this month, November, at least in the US. Everything's delayed. Everything's delayed because of COVID and the new consoles, and generally speaking, there's I think something else that's happening is that crunch is catching up to the industry in general.
Hmm.
It's just catching up, right? COVID, like many things in today's world, COVID exposed things that were already there, but could be hidden. But now pushing for games to just be on time, whatever false timetable the game is going to come out, it's not acceptable, especially in the console stage. Especially if your games, if you're going to be your first games, and they're the games that are going to sell your consoles. Later on, you can take oh yeah, this game came out 3 years later, and 10 million people bought your consoles. Like, yeah, we made our numbers, right? We got 10 million users, of which 8 or 9, whatever, are online, playing Fortnite or whatever. No problem. We'll take our lumps, right? It's almost the equivalent of the Red Ring of Death that happened with the 360 and stuff like that, right? And the Joy Cons, like it's the kind of thing that you want to avoid when you're releasing a new piece of hardware, right? You want those games. The problem, and I think this is also what we talked about this before, how backwards compatibility is crucial, and I think that's why particularly Microsoft is so keen on it because they want to have that library. They want to be able to say, buy this game, and there's this library. Like it used to be when you bought an old console and you saw the catalogs. Like we have 107 games. I remember they were for the Atari 2600. They would show the boxes stacked up on top of the 2600. Like we have all these games. Of course, you should buy in 1980 an outdated console. Because it has all the games. Why you buy the competition? It has like 5 games. We have like 200 or whatever, right? Nintendo, Sega, we have more titles, right? For PC, you upgrade so you can play whatever it's out there. For consoles, it's a matter of what the games you have, and being able to say, look, we have this huge library. Even 80%, 90% of these games are last generation or so, and also with games as service, being able to keep playing your games in the new hardware is also important. You know, so I think it's more than just COVID. COVID's just push it away. What do you think about that?
Well, it's with titles like Control and like Cyberpunk, it isn't so much necessarily like backwards compatibility that they're aiming for because they are essentially trying to make this game run natively on the system. Rather, like when I think of backwards compatibility, I think it's just like the ability to sort of run an emulator properly to be able to play these games. So that's like the biggest thing with that. I mean, my thing is, it's like maybe you guys should stop promising when you're going to release stuff if you don't know for sure that you're going to be there. Sure, sometimes you do have the unforeseeable circumstances, like COVID is a big one. Like I can definitely see why things would get affected like that. But once you adjust for that, and now that I'm sort of thinking like so. A cyberpunk in both Control, which is doing the same thing as Cyberpunk, is trying to get the game to run natively on there and take advantage of whatever fancy upgrades it has. That kind of makes me wonder, it's like, so is there that big of a difference? Are they that they're needing to smooth out the performance? And on one hand, I can sort of see why because I think they have two options with this case is that really Cyberpunk when you thought it was going to when you originally initially projected November, whatever it is, but just for PC and, last gen, and then push the other, versions out later when those are properly fleshed out and stuff. But at the same time, I can see why they didn't wanna do that because the this is essentially new IP, so you wanna be able, I guess, to have, like, the biggest reach, at the
Hmm.
same time, the biggest push to get all those numbers out rather than stagnate the releases like that.
Yeah,
Mm,
I mean, there's the needs from the basically console manufacturers that need to have the library, and then there's the need, and we talk about with Mass Effect, the revival and remaster of studios and particularly publishers to have titles every quarter and have those titles associated with the new stuff, right? Because if
yeah.
time passes, people, they might buy the console, but they're necessarily going to buy your games if your competition has games that are running. And again, when you tie in the idea of games as service, there's only so much time people can be playing MMO, the new type of MMOs, which is games as service. They're not going to be playing that. Like BioWare promising that they're going to have Anthem whenever. Dragon Age 4, or whatever they're gonna call it. Hopefully they're not gonna call it 4 because then it goes back to 2, and you know how that went. I know you like the game, but still. Uh
I hate the title too, they should have
yeah.
called it, like, Dragon Age: Rise to Power or
Or something.
something.
Yeah, something like that, right? And you need to have that. Otherwise, that empty quarter, especially in big public traded companies, people are like, where's our money, honey? You should be making money. You should have it's like, oh, we're making money from this and
Are
that, but what's the new stuff? We need more money, and it's
RC
not there.
CD Project Red, is it a publicly traded company?
It has
Okay, yeah.
become big. In fact, they took a huge hit with the last announcement of the delay of 2077. I think one of the reasons why they become a public traded company was because of GOG, right?
Mm.
GOG sales. I mean, they're a percentage of Steam sales, whatever, but they're big enough that and the sales of The Witcher 3 particularly, that if you want to do more, it's you have something to offer to investors and they bring in the money, etc. But now you're tied into the investors, what they want, and they want those quarters, if they want gains every single quarter. So there's that. So, and then you have the different strategies. I think the company that is ironically not affected by all this isn't, as always, the odd man out, Nintendo,
Hmm.
because they're not pushing really new hardware. The last hardware revision was, a smaller version of the Twitch, right? And sure, making current gen games work on this on the Switch. I said the Switch. I always mention it. I always mess it up. It's hard, and you have to sort of finagle because of screen and hardware limitations. But they don't have to. I mean, they constantly there every other week. They're like, oh yeah, we have Microsoft, a Nintendo Direct. Here it is, and their strategy of courting indies will make smaller, sometimes retro games that don't require the best and newest and best hardware. It's working for them because they know. I mean, they've been in this business for a very long time, since 1983, 84, with the Famicom when it came out, right? They know they need those titles, right? And since they already have a backlog of titles, and one of the most popular games of service, which Fortnite played perfectly well in their hardware, they have no rush, right? They're gonna be. I mean,
Yeah.
and Nintendo is known for making for delaying stuff and artificially, limiting numbers for their benefit, but they're not really suffering from this because they already sold, the large number of platforms,
Yeah.
and everybody has to be certified to Nintendo, so they're gonna get a cut no matter what. They're $5 or $10 or how much they get for every title gets sold, and they're not known for giving huge sales like everyone else. So they're fine. Ironically enough, they're the little console company that still could. Used to be a
Hmm.
giant, got downgraded. Now they're coasting away, right?
Yeah, and the other thing too with my I just remembered the other point with the downside to stagnating the releases. I think was I believe the rumor was is that Cyber they were having trouble optimizing it the way that getting it to run smoothly on the Xbox Series X. So that's also another point of contention. It's like, oh hey, so here are all the here's Cyberpunk 2077 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, and PlayStation 5. But we're working on the Xbox Series X. That's gonna, I guess, hurt relationships with Microsoft right there.
And let's remember that when this was not this year because it got canceled last year on E3, one of the biggest announcements, in fact, the announcements about 2077 happened during the Microsoft show. It didn't happen, but
You're
they didn't.
all
They didn't do it.
fabulous,
They didn't do. They didn't pull out Keanu Reeves for their own
breathtaking.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't do it for Nintendo. They didn't do it for Sony. They did it with Microsoft. So I'm betting that Microsoft may have slipped a couple of dollars. So you make sure that it comes out. And now that it can, just like, where's my money, honey? Where's my game? Come on, I gave you the right. And remember, also, Microsoft doesn't have a stranglehold on PC gaming, but still has influence on PC gaming, right?
Windows.
Yeah, Windows.
Most
Yeah,
games
so
almost will exclusively only run on Windows.
yeah, Linux is. I mean, you can use Linux to run a lot of stuff, but it's not the common platform,
Yeah,
software wise.
yeah. You go back to the whole modder thing
Yeah,
argument. It's not commonly available to most people.
and so yeah, I mean, developers and publishers need to fill their spaces, right? Also, remember, this is a big time of the year, regardless of whether have COVID or not. This is the reason why you release in November is that it runs the gamut all through December, right? Because it's the hot new game, right? Because if you release it anywhere
Yeah.
else in the year, which is, for example, what's going to happen with Mass Effect. I kind of said it in the video. I want to say it again. It's going to get released like, oh, it's released finally. A week later, people are gonna completely forget, unless he has problems like Andromeda, like has got released, he has a huge bugs or whatever, right? People are like, how talking like this, And if that doesn't happen, and I'm not making fun of any particular, I'm talking about the facial animations of Andromeda. I make that clear, which were pretty hilarious,
Shepard, my face is tired.
yeah.
You
If
okay there, Liara?
and yeah, Mass Effect 2 actually. Now that I remember, Mass Effect 2, Liara in the regular game and Liara in the DLC, they don't look the
Yeah.
same. Liara
No.
Liara look kind of.
She has the flat kind of crappy ME1 model, and then
Yeah,
she looks so bland and flat, and then of course she suddenly gets an upgrade when she gets attacked.
yeah, it's
Conspiracy
interesting.
theory, she actually got killed and she got replaced by
Clone.
a clone.
Yeah, Liara 2.0. Yeah, now hopefully they're gonna fix that in the new one. But yeah, it's gonna come out. People are gonna talk about it. I'm probably gonna stream it. Other people are gonna stream it because, of course, Mass Effect. We talk about that all the time here. So of course, and then a week later, it's like, oh, you still playing that? Okay, cool, cool, cool. We're playing whatever else, and that's it. It's gonna be a flash in the pan. And again, I think BioWare's doing it, and EA is doing it because they want to keep
We're yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, we're still playing it. Just, shut up and go back to playing PT.
yeah, whatever, right? It's gonna be whatever it is, right? It's very few games really stick. I think mostly multiplayer games have a much larger, longer, I should say, lifespan on Twitch and other places because of the excitement of multiplayer and whatever can happen in the moment. Single player games go out. There's a thing, and like Baldur's Gate 3. Oh, everybody's with Baldur's Gate 3, blah blah, and then now it's like Baldur's Gate
Oh
3.
yeah.
It burned itself out. I mean, people are still playing it, but it's like,
And I think the other reason too why it stayed rather relevant was because of all the bugs and complaints and stuff that it's essentially Divinity Original Sin 2 with a Baldur's Gate skin. That seems to be like the argument that I saw, and honestly, I could have told anyone that from
which
saying, "Oh, Larium Studios is attached to this title. It's going to be Divinity 2 again."
which is not bad because Divinity 2 is a good
Yeah.
game, right? So you could do much worse than that.
Yeah, I don't know what the original mechanics for Boulder Gate looked like. I think I seen you play it before, and it looked awfully. It looks annoyingly clunky. So
Well, it's old style. I mean, they were the Baldur's Gate was like the Aurora Engine was no something like it, but it was the isometric. What have and people call it isometric. Actually, it's a different name. I forget. Fallout 2 style, where you sort of you see your figures. Which I'm been playing Kingmaker. Kind of plays like that. All Kingmaker, they also updated the game quite a bit, and now it's a bit smoother, right? But that's what it is, right? It's that kind of gameplay and graphics and whatnot. Again, if you don't have anything, there's a lot of studios. I mean, we don't have a lot of studios out there who has even publishers outside of the big sports games. Don't really have a lot of big name games coming out, which is pretty strange.
and I think maybe that's what EA was trying to do with their small. Do you remember a couple of years ago they had like the smaller push, like, oh look, we got indie games like Unravel and Unravel 2 and what's it called, like Get Out, the
Yeah,
prison breaking game with the two players. I think
yeah,
I think that's what they were trying to do is kind of like push these games out. Well, not necessarily push them out, but kind of give them funding so that they kind of fill in the gaps of between releases. Of,
yeah.
of course, the problem with that strategy is that one that might run into delays depending. Ideally, it's smaller, so any kind of delay wouldn't be that massive.
hmm
But at the same time, too, it's like, okay, we got our product out, but on time. But then the game that was supposed to come out like 3 months later gets delayed more. So, uh-oh.
I mean, talking about EA had some two great Star Wars. This year has been a very long year, but two great Star Wars games come out this year, right? Single player Star Wars Jedi style gameplay, which I didn't buy because it has a lot of jumping puzzles into the void, and I suffer from vertigo, you know, so even virtual vertigo, and Star Wars Squadron. But all these were current gen, right? If Star Wars Squadrons and Battlefield 2 had lasted a little bit longer, closer to the as games of service, it will carry over, of course. Squadrons, of course, will carry over. They'll release a version for the new consoles, but by that time, it's like most people have played a single player campaign. You only have the community and multiplayer, but it isn't a fresh new title, right? It doesn't say and that's the thing, buy the new console, get the new hardware because you're gonna get these games. That's been always the
Yeah,
formula.
I think, well, like what the PlayStation 4 has Miles Morales out, which uh and I haven't played, I haven't gotten a chance to play Spider-Man yet. And what I'm kind of assuming that's almost like an asset flip, probably, in turn, especially considering how much they got it out. It's essentially Spider-Man again, but put Miles Morales in. I'm not entirely sure. That could just be me.
What I seen is that they put quite a bit of work on the character itself,
Yeah,
right? That
but like the
moves,
city and the
and then, well,
world,
yeah, that's basically the same New York City,
it's the
same,
same. Like that the game's already there. Like
yeah.
all we just make some new characters, write a new story, plug it in, and get the voice actors to record lines. Ta-da!
Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
It's yeah, it honestly, I don't mind that. Like I think that's pretty cool that it's reminiscent of like old what a lot of older like PlayStation 2 games used to do and like Majora's Mask, Final Fantasy X-2, those were pretty much just like the same game over, except that we just took the assets and yeah, there we go.
yeah. I mean,
I
using existing assets for make something interesting is always a good idea, and
Especially like yeah, like but in those cases, like it's pretty much all the assets with a couple new assets in there. It's like
yeah,
and honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong as long as the game is fun and it's interesting.
yeah.
I don't think there's any shame in doing that.
Talking
It's
about,
it's just
yeah,
the shame would be like it's exactly it's Spider-Man. It's the first game over again with just we just replace Peter Parker with Miles Morales, and it's exactly he's fighting the same villains and everything.
yeah. Talking about Final Fantasy 7 Part 1 came out,
Oh,
but remember they came out this year. Remember, for the
oh yeah, I
PlayStation.
think people for that was sort of a big flash in the pan, and it just kind of died off. I was thinking about that game.
And we talked about the fact that the reissue was be the second part and the third part would be released when you have the new
Hmm.
hardware, right? So you're gonna have a split, and of course you can transfer games. So if that's one of the things that the PlayStation saying will be backwards compatible with
Yeah,
PS4,
it's
but
saying
not
that's
PS5, but not PS3 because PS3 is very complicated, different architecture and all that, and yeah, and all that. So yeah, but it's if they were announcing, it would have been interesting if they were announcing release for this November or December,
yeah,
or releasing the second part, saying, "Oh, okay, first part comes in the first part of the year, but now with the new console, you can play the new part." So we whetted your appetite with the first part, and but essentially, what's going to happen is these are not simply chapters; these are full games.
yeah.
They took one game that had like 6, 7 discs, 3 discs, I think, and chopped it out into
Mhm. 3
three or
discs.
four games, right? And they calling them chapters because the I think it was 20 plus hours. The original the first part of Final Fantasy 7. So it's a
Yeah,
full
that's
game. It's a
mhm.
full game. It's not a Skyrim style game, 100 hours, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah, I'd say the Midgard place would take somewhere between 10 to like 15, 20 hours depending on how quick you read and how much you want to go through doing it, all the small things and talk to every character.
And I think people, especially people who are playing it because they have nostalgia, they want to go through everything to see all the changes and how oh, I want to talk to Tifa and how Tifa's here and all the other characters, right? Reg and everyone else. So it's they're gonna take their time. At least the first time around, they're gonna take their time, right? It doesn't actually have a lot of replayability. Also, once you figure it out to go through the story, it's like, well, that's just what happened, right? But there's no Final Fantasy VII Part Two, but it hasn't been announced. It hasn't been announced at all. It's just we're gonna make it
Oh
because
yeah,
of course we made the first part true, and I'm
whenever,
like, yeah, whatever.
whenever it's done,
Yeah,
maybe in
so
another 10 years.
could be anytime, hopefully not too
And
long.
the only the only I guess newish like game that had me interested for any of the new consoles was the Ratchet and Clank game, which I think has been delayed or not scheduled to come out at launch. It's going to come in later in
Yeah,
2021. And of course, that's just because it's a fuzzy little character, fuzzy little furry character mascot
thing,
thing.
yeah.
And yeah, that's honestly like that's honestly, those are like the reasons why I got a PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and eventually PlayStation 4.
Yeah. I mean, again, but going back to Microsoft, although they have this huge back catalog, this game hasn't been a system killer or seller in a while, but they're
Mhm.
trying to, and that's Halo Infinite, right? Halo back in the day with the Xbox and Xbox OC and Xbox 360 was like the big game, But by now, the Xbox Series, whatever, it's not, and it got
Yeah.
delayed. Right? It's like, oh, we're gonna delay to next year. So Microsoft is buying a lot of studios, but don't have a lot of games. I mean, they've been buying the studios for what, a year and a half now, maybe 2 years. When they
Two
talk about,
years.
yeah, about talk about Quad A, but it takes, and that's another thing again, bringing back business models. What's a number I thrown around when we talk about how long it takes to make a video game? Around 5 years, right? And we also
Mm-hmm.
talked about how long it takes to really get maximum performance out of the native hardware. It takes about 18 months, 2 years or more for the first crop of games for people, because one thing is you have the development kit, and you have it, and you usually get it about a year or two before a game comes out, right? Because that's what they get developed. But one thing is to have the development kit and just create the first thing that happens, and then with time, making multiple games and saying, okay, we know the tips and tricks and how to use the memory thing, and oh, we can use this feature this way, but this feature doesn't work as well. We need this, we need that, etc. I mean, again, going to Mass Effect, if you look at the original Mass Effect, which was an Xbox 360 exclusive, it kind of looked more like an end of Xbox OC game rather than a
This,
more native hardware, which Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3 were able to take and even
yeah.
exceed the limits
I
of the
think it was
Xbox, right?
being. I think that's because it was also being developed with the first Xbox in mind.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at like the proof of concept demos, like that definitely looks like PlayStation or Xbox original graphics.
So yeah, I mean, it takes time, right? And you talk about Cyberpunk being able. There's a difference between making what it's right now, making working in the new hardware. Although, if you think about it, I guess now looking back in the 360, now that we had 4 or 5 years, again, you can tell the difference. Now you go back to 360 and you look, it's like it's getting a little janky. It's not, the textures are not
Mhm.
as great as this generation. But when the games came out, the difference was minor, right?
Yeah.
And again, again, it takes time for that to develop. With also you throwing delays in hardware because oh, you pre-ordered, we don't know when you're gonna get it, right? Situation. I don't know. I don't want to do this thing I did 4 5 years ago when I said, oh, consoles might be dying. But
Well,
this is one heck of a roll to die nonetheless.
and this is also the thing. I'm I am writing my script for my next video when this is something I brought up because I sort of see this being a thing. This is one of the reasons why physical disc and physical releases are probably dying. Think about it. Cyberpunk is already pretty much gold. They're just working on flushing it out for like the newer consoles and stuff. So all the physical releases that are sitting in some warehouse somewhere in some distribution center, those are already printed and have whatever version was printed on them many months ago
Mhm.
versus what the product at launch is going to be with all the day one DLCs and anything else that they decide to patch in and stuff. Um, One of the things I'm discussing with my review is the fact that I'm pretty sure that the version that's printed on my disc for this limited it's a limited edition. I don't think this game was meant to really have very many releases or just like a common release physical
Mhm.
version. There's like two limited versions of it. One's a collector's, one's the limited one. I feel that the thing that's printed on the disc is not it's past the beta. I'd say it's more of a like a release candidate is what they call it.
Mhm.
An unfinished release candidate. Like it's playable, but it's wow. Like this is this is what you chose to say is gold and print on disc and ship it out. But that's the thing is that you have to have like something to put on these discs and have it manufactured and distributed out on time by whatever release date you guys already had in mind,
Mhm.
already dedicate yourself. So they're going to take stuff that's rather unfinished and many months before the game is supposed to be due out and print it, send it off to get printed, and then of course in between finish the game.
Yeah. I mean, this has happened before. It's happened right before. I started finishing the game right there at the finish
The
line,
11th
right?
hour.
11th hour, 11:45, right? And I think again we're seeing the limits of crunch and the limits of how games are being made right now. We've been talking about things have to change. We talked about this throughout the year, this year, and the past years in the podcast.
Especially just CD Projekt Red, and one of the reasons why I don't want to buy this game at launch is just this idea that like, oh, CD Projekt Red, it's the golden child, our golden calf almost of the gaming industry, and they can do no wrong despite the fact that they're like, yeah, I'm the golden calf, we're not going to crunch our people and our employees, and we treat them right. We have a cafeteria that they can eat for free, and I don't they have musical performances there, and like we treat them right, and like we don't crunch them. There's not going to be microtransactions. You're going to get all this free content, additional content post launch. That's definitely not like us trying to finish the game later.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to give it all, and it's like they're not. They're crunching their their people after say they weren't. I've heard that there's going to be microtransactions in it.
In the
Is
multiplayer.
it? Oh,
Although non confirmed because the reaction to CD Projekt Red is like these are rumors.
yeah.
We
There
don't talk
it's
about them. But the fact that they're consistent and persistent shows me
yeah.
somebody's talking. Somebody's whispering.
Mm,
Yeah. Someone's like, yeah,
yeah.
hold to your butts because they're coming.
It,
Right.
yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, this game's definitely done, guys. Oh, we delayed it for reasons,
Yeah.
and it's like, and the thing is too, they delayed it for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. I mean, they're valid reasons. Trying to get it to run great, that's fine, but it wasn't for like, oh yeah, so we're gonna delay it for another couple weeks as we want to get it right, and we also don't want to push our employees.
I mean, yeah, and I think CD Projekt Red with 2077, and that's the we talked about lesser games, but the games getting bigger, which means there's lesser games, which each game then becomes this basket of eggs where you have to put more and more and more stuff in it, more features, more things to make it stand out. At the
And
same
still
time
like
that
$60.
yeah, or it's probably gonna be $70 because already
Well, I mean,
NBA
there's the
2K and other are already upping the price for next
well,
generation. Uh,
well, to be fair, I think they have like what they have I mean, they have Cyberpunk $60, and then they have like a deluxe version that's the exact same game with just like more little physical release stickers for like $10-15 more or something.
yeah, of
It's like,
course.
hey, you can show your support. It's not cut content or anything, and no stupid guns and shit that get added in. It's just, hey, here's some goodies.
I mean, that's fair if you're in the collector market and you like those things, fine, you pay more. They're not gonna charge you like,
And I think the original also the $60 base one also comes with like physical goodies and stuff.
yeah. But I think it's especially for CD Projekt Red, who last game was The Witcher 3, right? And it's a huge success. They gin up themselves so much, like this is gonna be the best thing, this is gonna be the thing, and we're that they keep putting eggs in the basket, right? And it's what's called bloat. Essentially, it's a gold bloat, where I mean, you put more and more stuff, and the thing is, you have to put more and more stuff because, ironically, the games are, especially games of service, are so generic. They're so formulaic. That in order to make your Assassin's Creed of today, which people are reviewing Valhalla right now, I'm not gonna buy anything from Ubisoft. I'm sorry, never again after Far Cry 5. Uh, from other Assassin's Creed game and other similar games, it's like, well, this one has this little feature and this other little feature, right? But that means that while you're working on known ground, you have to make all these new features work. And so it's more complicated and it's a bigger game every year or every time you're making one. So whatever shortcuts you take kind of get eat up, right? And so you end up always with crunch because, you know, this game is supposed to be played for dozens, hundreds of hours, and it's supposed to be the next push for microtransactions or whatever. So, you know,
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, the conclusion is I'm gonna give the next couple of weeks to maybe a couple of months from now all the way to March to see that this is basically everybody outside of Nintendo essentially is taking the die and they're just rolling the die. It could be the biggest generation ever because the last one generation was the biggest, almost the biggest generation ever, or it could not. I'm not gonna predict an apocalypse, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised a couple of people out there, your Blizzards maybe, or some others, roll snake eyes. We might see some by next year, by 2021, we might see some major checkups in the industry, or not, as the case may be.
So, I honestly wouldn't expect anything for like the start of this console generation. I don't think it's gonna start off with a bang and
Hmm.
as everyone wants. But I think the console generation is gonna be very interesting to kinda keep an eye on it because it seems like everyone is sort of going in their own direction in terms of what they wanna offer. You got Nintendo doing its own thing. You got, um, Microsoft pretty much making a beefy machine, but, "Hey, you can play our games anywhere," and, like, on any kinda hardware, on almost any kind of hardware. And then you have, Sony that seems to just kind of staying the course, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our take on the situation. Chapelmon, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Chapelmon pretty much anywhere. I am Chapelmon underscore here on Twitch and Twitter, but I primarily have my content over on YouTube. Just search Chapelmon and you'll find me.
And of course, you can find me here. Lessons Learned. Lesson Learned One is the channel. Doing a podcast on Mondays, and I'll probably continue with Kingmaker for a while until I find another game because I reached a bit of a wall in that game. And also on Sundays, I'm over at Rakta's channel playing in the mornings. To Hackmaster, and in the evenings, D&D Fifth Edition. So I've joined a new online campaign over the Raktus channel, which is RKTUS. So thank you, ready for coming. As always, we'll see you. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.